Welcome everyone. Today's presentation is entitled Behold, the bridegroom is coming. This is the greatest event of all times. It's called the wedding of the Lamb. And the wedding of the Lamb is the only event that will bring the world to make a clear distinction between Christ and Baal. Even Ellen White explains so beautiful in Christ Object Lesson, page 307, what is the meaning of marriage, or this wedding. By the marriage is represented the union of humanity with divinity. This is the wedding of the Lamb. That's why it's the greatest event of all times. The wedding of the Lamb is our destiny. And without the fulfilling of the greatest event of all times, the Adventist Church has no reason to continue its existence. We have to realize that any religious and compassionate organization with more members and greater wealth than we have could take over what Adventists are trying to do. And unless there is something truly about what we profess that makes our responsibility irreplaceable, then we need to understand that we failed. And our failure as leaders and members to fully appreciate this divine appointment accounts for our insecurity and concern for acceptance by the world. With deep sadness, we can see that our faith remains immature and that we don't even have that unshakable conviction that the wedding of the Lamb will take place before the second coming. We are certain that we do not believe in salvation by works, although all too often we practice it and sometimes publish it. Our frustration in finishing the work grows out of man-made committee's strategy rather than deep conviction that all things are ready and the only event that still remains is to come to the wedding. It is vain to speak of finishing the work apart from the wedding. The work may be finished only by a people who gather around the sanctuary by faith and enter into the blessing of the holiest where the marriage takes place. At this moment, the Laodicean church is rejecting the wedding. They don't even believe in such a concept. We are loath to believe that the gospel is indeed the power of God unto salvation from all the snares of God's enemy, and not merely good advice to feed the emotions. We need to face the truth of our situation. But more important, do we have the courage and moral stamina to confront our nakedness with the righteousness of Christ? Do we sense our calling as a bride? Do we understand that there is a cosmic controversy that demands a solution? And that the solution is not in getting more people interested in heavenly mansions, but a people willing to participate in this marriage that will make us partakers of divine nature. Now, the theological stress in Adventist church is reaching what I call the breaking point. Unity at the present time is diminishing, and without unity there's no possible way for the Holy Spirit to return and accomplish the work that heaven attempted 130 years ago at Minneapolis. We have the historic Adventist and the progressive Adventist are in sharp contrast, and it is a mystery how today they exist side by side in our church. The wide spectrum of our doctrinal interpretation breeds weakness and uncertainty. We now place multiple meanings on our very basic teachings that defines our very own identity. Let me give you some examples. Adventists now read in two different ways such basics as righteousness by faith, righteousness of Christ, or the human nature of Christ, or the sanctuary, the third angel message, the Day of Atonement, the nature of sin, God's character, etc. the increasingly confused theology in our church today cannot stand before the test of making the difference between Christ and Baal. There is reason to believe that if these fundamentals are still rejected by the church, then it will be unable to fill its appointed place. That text which says, the bride will make herself ready for the marriage. Now, let's remember that the ground truth that brought together the Seventh-day Adventist Church into being, and which sustains its divine mandate and nurtures its destiny, is the truth of the sanctuary with its culminating planetary event called the Day of Atonement for the Living, or the Wedding of the Lamb from Revelation 19. As long as we proclaim the third angel's message, and we do understand the meaning of the temple as stated in Desire of Ages 161, then we can remain confident of our high destiny. But if this grand truth that brought the Seventh-day Adventist Church into being is being ridiculed, nullified, and destroyed, then the consequence of this blind warfare is going to put in danger the event called the Wedding of the Lamb for many more years from now. Now, I have good news. John the Revelator envisioned the wedding, and we are confident that this grand event will take place. Our generation can become the last one if we are going to fulfill our destiny. Let's never forget that in spite of the foremost importance of the second coming of Christ, this occurrence will never happen unless another event will take place before this, and that it's the marriage of the bridegroom. You remember, behold, the bridegroom cometh. This event, it's also called the Day of Atonement for the Living. We're talking about the same concept, wedding or atonement. It's the same concept. The sanctuary must be cleansed before Christ can return. The third angel's message is the last message to mankind before Christ comes. And if you remember the text from Hebrew 9:28, the second time not to deal with sin unto salvation. He doesn't deal with sin. This is before this. Old sin must be dealt with before he comes. This is as sure as the word of prophecy. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Everybody knows Daniel 8:14. His sanctuary will be eternally cleansed before he comes. For Jesus closes his mediatorial work before he comes. Even inspiration proves that. Let's see how Ellen White talks about this in The Great Controversy, page 421. The cleansing of the sanctuary therefore involves a work of investigation, a work of judgment. This work must be performed prior to the coming of Christ to redeem his people. For when he comes, his reward is with him to give to every man according to his work. And this is also proven in Revelation 22, verse 12. Let me read it to you. He who is unjust, let him be unjust still. He who is filthy, let him be filthy still. He who is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy still. And behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me to give to everyone according to his work. Now, let's not forget that our movement was born and nurtured in the symbology of the sanctuary, and that the realization of the ultimate problem of the universe was the divorce in Eden, which could only be solved by the event called the Day of Atonement for the Living, or the Wedding of the Lamb. This understanding gave birth to the Adventist Church. If you remember, the daily ministration was different from the yearly made on the 10th day of the 7th month. In making the former, the priest went into the holy place, but for the latter, he went into the Holy of Holies. The daily service was for the individual cases. The yearly service was for the entire nation, the corporate body. Second of all, the daily service was made for the forgiveness of sins. Daily forgiveness of sins. And the yearly service was for blotting the sins out. The daily service could be made any time during the year. But the yearly service only on the 10th day of the 7th month. Thus, my brothers, the yearly service was for Israel the most important day of the year, when by blood the sanctuary was cleansed within. Likewise, the new covenant sanctuary is cleansed. Humanity and divinity are united. This is the only meaning of atonement. This is the only meaning of at-one-ment. This is the only meaning. The proclamation of the third angel's message, which points the way in the most holy place, as Ellen White states, this is where the wedding will take place. And right now, this has grown stale. And at this moment in time, we are not even sure if there is any good reason for us to enter into this marriage with divinity. We don't even have this concept in our theological understanding. Our prophetic destiny to come to our own wedding is growing dim. We are ready to join with ancient Israel in her prophetic frustration and cry, the days are prolonged and every vision faileth. We don't even know about the cosmic vision of being made partakers of divine nature. Our problem is not so much that we are blind, but rather that we think that we can see. That's our biggest problem. Now let's read this. If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, we see, your guilt remains. I mean, this is our attitude in the church and everywhere. All evidence points to the fact that all 10 virgins are asleep and that the groom does not have his bride ready. Now, far too many Seventh-day Adventists are content to see their place as an even larger church with increasing acceptance around the world. And I say, if institutions of fame can be built and maintained, and if government sponsorship can be obtained in far-off countries, we hope our place can be assured. I mean, our destiny is not to have sufficient recognition among other denominations. That's not the purpose why we were brought on God's plan. Seventh-day Adventists have been content to stand by and watch history unfold. We can read all the signs with much discernment, but the signs only get more perplexing and time goes on. Many Adventists are deeply concerned to get the end-time events all fitted into the proper box on the calendar. Charts and detailed lists are made to show when probation will close, the sealing take place, the latter rain comes, the Sunday law is passed, and the shaking accomplished, preceding the time of trouble, plus many other details. I mean, it's important. This may be important, but they do not determine the outcome of the dragon's war with the remnant of her seed. Our destiny, it is not to get all the end-time events fitted into the proper box on the calendar. Each passing year should make it more evident that the events of the end are of minor importance compared with the issues of the end. It is past time for the church to recognize that the final events are contingent upon the issues being set out clearly. Until then, we, as a church, must remain captive to our own blindness. This means that angels must continue holding the winds of events until the bride grapples with her issues and immaturity. And this selfish attitude denies our destiny here and now. the wedding of the Lamb. It's the only event that will settle for all eternity the great controversy, and that's why God calls a people to unite with Him through marriage. But the immature bride in this hour needs to go back and restudy her divine mandate that we rejected in 1888. God's eternal purpose is for every created being, from the bright and holy seraph to men. Desire of Ages 161. And this should be a temple. That's the meaning. All of us, we have to be a temple for the indwelling of the Creator. The wedding of the Lamb should be a continual witness to the high destiny open before this movement. And only the Day of Atonement will cleanse our hearts. And still to continue from Desire of Ages 161, I remember that Ellen White says, from the defilement of sin, from the earthly desires, the selfish lusts, the evil habits that corrupt the soul. It is in the certainty of having the faith of Jesus that we joyfully and solemnly respond to God's message to see God in His sanctuary on the great Day of Atonement. Let's look through to this text from Joel 2. It's amazing. This is the call. This is our destiny. Blow the trumpet in Zion. Consecrate a fast. Call a sacred assembly. Gather the people. Sanctify the congregation. Assemble the elders. Gather the children and nursing babes. Let the bridegroom go out from his chamber, and the bride from her dressing room. Let the priest who minister to the Lord weep between the porch and the altar. Let them say, spare your people, O Lord, and do not give your heritage to reproach, that the nation should rule over them. Why should they say among the people, where is their God? It is in the thrilling expectation of this hope that the virgins are going forth to meet the bridegroom in response to the message. Now, the Day of Atonement trumpet sounds strong and clear. The king sends forth his servants for the second and last call to the professed people of God. That's why he says, all things are ready, come to the marriage. Let all who love his appearing behold by faith the open door to the holiest of all. Let them respond to the invitation to enter the marriage, the final union between divinity and humanity. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Dare we sleep in the view of the consummation of the hope of all ages?